Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of Weapons and Warfare. For Straight Arrow News, I'm your host, Ryan Robertson, and as you can see, we are in National Harbor, Maryland again, site of the Navy League's annual Sea Air Space Exposition, where our nation's maritime leaders gather to discuss the transformation of these sea services in preparation for a future conflict. Just ahead on this week's episode, we talk with Admiral James Kilby, the acting chief of naval operations, to get his thoughts on how the Navy is modernizing to meet the needs of our national defense. And he weighs in on the future of the Navy's 6th-gen fighter attack aircraft, the F/A-XX. Plus, I slip on some headgear and climb into a cockpit demonstrator to find out how one company is preparing to train future naval aviators as they prepare to take over the tip of the spear. But first, some headlines you may have missed.
Meet the new boss. Definitely not the same as the old boss. The new Secretary of the Navy, John Phelan, is a career businessman with no real military experience to speak of. He used sea airspace as an opportunity to deliver his first major speech, during which he promised to shake up the Navy's old ways that he says allowed China to gain ground on the United States.
While we've been mired in bureaucratic inertia, budgetary gridlock in Congress, and chronic shortfalls in shipbuilding investment, our adversaries have been building and getting better. China constructed more ships last year alone than we have since World War II.
Confirmed by the Senate last month, Phelan replaces Naval Academy graduate and retired Navy Commander Carlos Del Toro. Since his confirmation, Phelan has been visiting facilities in Quonset Point, Rhode Island, and Groton, Connecticut. The Navy League speech was his first major address in D.C., aside from his confirmation hearing. How about a little ceremony with your circumstance? On the final full day of this year's event, Congressman Joe Courtney of Connecticut christened the Blue Bottle Unmanned Surface Vessel, or USV, built by Australia's OSHIS technology and now equipped with a towed sensor array and related technology from Connecticut-based Thayer Mahan. The vehicle is the first of 6 to be delivered from OSHIS to Thayer Mahan, and it's now ready to fill a need for persistent surveillance in the open waters of the Pacific Ocean.
This vessel that we took to host our sonar on is what we found as the best of class in a worldwide search, and so they bring a best-of-breed vessel. We bring a best-of-breed sonar together. It's a tremendous package.
The USV, now named the Thayer Mahan Outpost, is one of 6 planned for use. The second USV sold to Thayer Mahan is already in the United States, with the third on its way, while the last 3 are projected for delivery by the end of the fiscal year. The Navy is addressing the rising costs of countering Houthi drones by deploying 2 systems, Anduril's Roadrunner and Raytheon's Coyote, on destroyers this summer. Talking to reporters, Admiral Daryl Cottle, commander of United States Fleet Forces Command, recently told the group this deployment will enhance UAV targeting. Since late 2023, concerns about the expense of using costly missiles against cheaper drones emerged, known as the cost curve problem. In 15 months, the Navy launched 220 missiles, which cost more than $500 million. For the uninitiated, the Roadrunner is a loitering munition, and the Coyote is a launchable interceptor. Both were tested at sea. The Navy is also exploring laser weapons for drone defense, but progress on that front has been slower.
Thanks to the demands of their various jobs, it can be difficult to gather America's maritime leadership in one place to talk about where the Navy is and where it's going, which is what makes Sea Air Space such an important event on the calendar. The acting chief of naval operations, Admiral James Kilby, met with the media and moderated a panel discussion with 5 naval commanders. They talked about some recent wins and areas where they have to get better as the branch continues to modernize in the face of a growing array of threats. Amid the pomp and circumstance that's the norm at events like the Navy League's Sea Air Space were plenty of questions for the acting chief of naval operations, Admiral James Kilby, and 5 of his operational and systems commanders. One of the most prominent, how close is the branch to meeting its goal of 80% combat surge readiness? In 2018, when then Defense Secretary James Mattis told the Navy to get its FA-18 Super Hornet fleet back up to speed, bumping up the number of ready jets from 250 to 341. The Navy revamped its maintenance practices and hit the target.
The truth is it took well over a year to get there, and now to sustain it takes a all-hands effort all the time with the Naval Aviation Enterprise, OpNav, SecNav staff, the whole team.
Inspired by that, other parts of the Navy, including surface and submarine forces, have also started changing their maintenance and logistics to boost their readiness. And the numbers show they're getting there. The closest to that 80% goal is the branch's aircraft carriers at 70%, while submarines and surface warships are sitting at 67% and 68% respectively. Of course, one of the biggest hurdles facing Kilby and the rest of Navy leadership is twofold. Too many boats still in the production pipeline or sitting in need of long-term maintenance.
The last part is partnering with industry, which we adhere to. We can't do it by ourselves. I meet with industry on a weekly basis to talk about which avails are not going well. And the path that my predecessor, Admiral Kitchener, started with our North Star of 75 mission-capable ships has segued very well into our 80% combat surge-ready goal.
After the opening panel, Admiral Kilby stepped away from the festivities to field questions from a select group of media in attendance. While covering a wide range of topics, the one that was at the top of our list.
Speaking of timelines and things that the service branch needs, do you have any update on FAXX and how that's going?
Yeah, I don't want to get ahead of the contract decision, but I will tell you we need FAX in the United States Navy, just like the Air Force does. I mean, we're talking about a fight in the Pacific. We fight together as a joint force, so having that capability is very important for us.
And follow-up question is, what is the service like? What is left to be done before the contract decision is announced? I mean, there was rumors it was going to get announced a couple of weeks ago. What is the Navy waiting on?
Yeah, it's a decision at the secretarial level and above, and they're working that now.
Another area of conversation, how to handle the threat of the Houthis and other bad actors in a cost-effective manner, particularly the drone threat now posed by anyone with a little money and bad intentions.
As the former N9, I was focused on a high-end laser, 500 kilowatts to 1 megawatt, and I have regret for that I had not been thoughtful enough to think about UAV threat, where I think a much lesser power weapon would have done what we needed it to do. We are putting on capabilities on the Forward Strike Group, who's Intercom 2X today, that it will be a much more cost-effective way to deal with the UAV threat in particular. But we have to get after the industrial base, our munitions industrial base, in the same manner we have to get after our shipbuilding industrial base to increase more munitions.
When pressed on the subject of lasers as a solution, Kilby said it's the kind of investment that needs to be fully fleshed out.
I don't want to abandon it, but I'm not ready to go all in yet on buying these things until I can have a relatively sure output in an action.
To put a point on the problem, in January, Vice Admiral Brendan McLean, the head of Naval Surface Forces, told attendees of the Surface Navy Association conference that over the previous 15 months, the U.S. Navy's surface fleet launched nearly 400 munitions in their fight against Iranian-backed Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. That included 120 SM-2 missiles at a cost of $1.2 million per, 80 SM-6 missiles at $4 million a pop, along with a total of 20 evolved Sea Sparrow missiles and SM-3 missiles, a number that would likely cost in the 9-digit range.
Serving you clarity through context, our mission at SAN is to deliver the news straight down the middle. We're different from mainstream media because we spotlight distorted headlines and show you how to do it too. Discover stories that right and left-leaning outlets are choosing not to cover by using our Media Mist tool. Download the SAN app and turn on notifications to have straight facts delivered right to your phone or tablet, and get straight facts anytime at SAN.com.
All right, folks, for our weapon of the week this week, we have something special for you. Joining me now to talk about it is Steve Helmer with Textron. Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So, call sign JoJo, that means you're a pilot, naval aviator. We're talking about a new potential naval trainer. Walk me through the steps.
So what we have here is the M346N, which is the most visible part of a training system that we're offering the Navy as a potential T-45 replacement.
And when you say it's the most visual part, it's a system of systems, right? I mean, we have the simulator behind you, but that ties into the entire training system as a whole.
That's exactly right. So everything from the smart chair you see behind me to the operational flight trainers to the aircraft can all be networked together. And then we can utilize live virtual constructive environments to simulate air-to-air, air-to-ground, any training environment really, and work all the way from beginning stages of familiarization all the way up to large force exercise training.
So how is that different than what happens today?
Well, that allows us to bring a lot of advanced training concepts such as radar intercepts in the air-to-air environment and precision-guided munitions in the air-to-ground environment into the training command. So things that currently students aren't doing in the in the F-35 or the F-18, they're now going to be able to do in the training command. They're going to show up to their fleet jet with a lot more advanced knowledge.
And what does that bring to the service when you're able to train the aviator with much more, exquisite systems, more complex systems earlier on in their career? When they're ready to go, what does that bring to the service as a whole?
Quality of training.
And what does that translate into?
What that really translates into is more warfighter readiness at a lower cost.
All right. So walk me through the paces on what behind you right here. It's the chair, it's a simulator. What all can a pilot who's using it, who's training to become a naval aviator, what can they do with this system?
Well, what we can do here is we can simulate field landings, aircraft carrier landings, air-to-air and air-to-ground mission sets, and we can bring in virtual wingmen. When we're networked together, we can actually have the simulator and the aircraft networked such that I'm in the aircraft and you're in the simulator, and we can actually fly with each other or against each other. So there's a whole range of mission sets that we can simulate with this system.
When you were coming up, you're a Top Gun grad, right? When you were coming up through the system, how much would it have helped you if you had a system like this?
Well, I'm not a Top Gun grad. I'm actually a Navy test pilot school graduate. But this system would have helped tremendously, particularly in the environment of learning radar intercepts. A lot of those basics, just simply how to read a radar scope, where to put the bogey on your scope to get in a certain position relative to that bogey, is a skill that I had to learn in the fleet replacement squadron, i.e. in the F-18. So I was doing that at that $20,000 to $30,000 per flight hour in that airplane, and needing to do a lot of study offline, and that took several months of my training. So if you can bring all that training into the training command, now a student shows up to that airplane at that $20,000 to $30,000 per flight hour with the basic skill sets already laid down. They're going to be able to pick up a lot more, a lot quicker, and be able to get out to the fleet as a higher quality aviator.
All right, JoJo, thank you so much for joining us today. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you very much for your time.
12 months ago at this very event, we spoke with the CEO of Fairbanks Morse Defense about some of the issues the shipbuilding industry needs to navigate as it tries to meet the needs of the Navy, Marines, and Coast Guard. Fast forward 12 months, and FMD is back at Sea Airspace, this time with an announcement that should help calm some very choppy waters. And with just a few pin strokes, the picture clouding the Navy's need for shipbuilding and long-delayed maintenance issues potentially got a little clearer.
This is really exciting. Hyundai Heavy is the largest shipbuilder in the world. We are the largest supplier of equipment to the U.S. Navy. Most of our business, 90% of our business is in the U.S. Their business is obviously global. This is a chance for us to say, hey, how can we expand outside of the U.S. into Korea, the second largest shipbuilding country in the world? And then for them, they don't do a lot in the U.S., and then what are the opportunities that we can share with them for them to develop business in the U.S.? So this is a really big day for both of us.
It was some of the biggest news coming out of this year's Sea Airspace Conference. Fairbanks Morse Defense and South Korean shipbuilding giant HD Hyundai Heavy Industries announcing a new partnership to explore potential collaboration on international Navy programs. FMD's CEO, George Whittier, says the Memorandum of Understanding reflects a growing trend of U.S. maritime companies teaming up with foreign shipbuilders, particularly from South Korea and Japan.
We feel that we know everyone in the market. They clearly know everyone in the market on the Korean side, so valve companies, motor companies, things like that for us. On this side, it's how do we introduce them to folks in the Navy, how do we introduce them to folks in the U.S. shipbuilding industry, so that we can kind of grow and collaborate and mutually go after opportunities in both countries.
This marks Fairbanks Morse's first major international partnership since it became independent from Inpro Industries in 2020. The company has been focused on building essential components for naval ships and has made several acquisitions in recent years, but most of its work has been with U.S. clients.
It's really interesting that it's coming together now. The first meeting we had with them was actually about 18 months ago, so these things always take a little bit of time to germinate, but if you don't have that first meeting, then you don't end up, kind of where you are today. But that first meeting, the introductions, I was in Korea, had a chance to sit down and talk to them, kind of frame something out, and then now we're taking a look where the U.S. Navy is. They just did some overhaul work on the Wally Sharar in Korea within the last month or two. There's clearly more of a emphasis on doing more international work from a U.S. Navy standpoint. So this is really really opportune for us to be talking about this at this point in time.
For their part, HD Hyundai's leadership highlighted their long history of shipbuilding excellence and expressed confidence that their expertise could help the U.S. Navy, pointing to their active partnerships with U.S. defense firms HII and Anduril.
All opinions expressed in this segment are solely the opinions of the contributors.
All right, folks, that's all the time we have for you this week, but rest assured, we have more content coming to you in the weeks and months ahead from the Navy League's Sea Airspace 2025 Exposition. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe to all of our social media feeds. It'll help you stay on top of all the stories we're doing, and you can also check out some of our past reporting. Also, tell your friends about the show. We need your help growing it. For my wrap this week, I'm going to stay on the topic of preparation, specifically the need to prepare in national defense. At this year's Expo, just like in years past, there were representatives not just from the United States, but her allies around the world: South Korea, Japan, Australia, Israel, the United Kingdom, Finland, Norway, the list goes on. All of these countries coming together in preparation for conflicts they hope never happen. But hope isn't a strategy. And no matter how much America and her allies may want to avoid certain conflicts, like in the Indo-Pacific or the Northern Tier, our adversaries get a vote in the matter as well. I read your comments on our social media feeds, so I know this next little bit of information is not going to sit well with some of you. But it's the truth, and the truth needs to be told. Unless something drastic alters the course of current affairs, in the next 5 to 10 years, the United States military will be involved in a conflict with China in the Pacific or Russia in the Arctic, or both. I hope I'm wrong. I'm sure plenty of military leaders and analysts hope they're wrong too. But again, hope is not a strategy. So, America and our allies need companies like Anduril, Boeing, HII, and more making the weapons and vehicles that will win a war. We need companies like Fairbanks Morse, working with companies in allied nations, forging new paths. I'm not a warmonger, and I'm not on a defense contractor's payroll. But let's be honest, folks. If America finds itself in a war with China or Russia, we have to win. There is no other option. So we have to prepare, because as the old saying goes, if we fail to prepare, we're preparing to fail. For senior producer Brett Baker, video editor Brian Spencer, graphics artist Dakota Patillo, and our photographer extraordinaire for the week, Dickon Major, I'm Ryan Robertson with Straight Arrow News, signing off.